Logan Wade had just taken a bite of a stale protein bar when the ceiling exploded above him, showering the UN diplomatic chamber in molten steel and Zytherian plasma. He hadn't even had time to finish chewing. 1 second, he was slouching behind the Earth delegation's table, half listening to Ambassador Ricci mispronounce the alien leader's name for the 3rd time. The next, screams echoed off metal walls. A Zytherian commander screamed something in its shrill, bird-like dialect, and a blue laser beam disintegrated the Australian foreign minister's left arm. Logan didn't blink. He spat out the half-chewed protein bar, grabbed a metal water pitcher, and lobbed it like a grenade. It bounced off a panel, nailed a Zytherian in the face, and bought him exactly 4 seconds to drag 2 delegates under the table before hell rained fully. For an intergalactic peace summit, it was going about as well as a drunk bar fight between mime artists and flamethrower salesmen. The Zytherians were sleek, precise, and terrifyingly coordinated. Their armor shimmered like insect carapace dipped in starlight, and their weapons hummed with a low resonance that rattled the bones. But they made one fatal mistake. They assumed Earth had only sent diplomats. What they didn't know was that among the translators, cultural advisors, and peacekeeping representatives sat a man who had once throat-punched a pirate on fire. Logan Wade hadn't worn a uniform in 5 years, but old instincts didn't retire. They just slept under sarcasm and boredom. This mission was supposed to be a joke. That's what Logan told himself when he'd accepted the job. Babysit a bunch of suit-wearing nerds, nod at aliens, avoid farting into the translator mic. The pay was garbage, the coffee was worse, and the Zytherians, at first, had seemed more curious than threatening. They liked Earth's 80s music and had asked about sushi. No red flags. No cold stares. Just a weird request to avoid the open palm gesture because it resembled a Zytherian death challenge. A detail Earth's head diplomat, Ricci, had promptly forgotten during his opening remarks when he waved like a kindergarten teacher at pickup time. Logan didn't blame the Zytherians for the misunderstanding. He blamed humans for thinking they could waltz into deep space diplomacy with PowerPoint slides and vegan catering. The moment Ricci raised that hand and smiled like a dad at a barbecue, Logan had felt the air shift. He leaned forward, saw the Zytherian commander's mandibles twitch, saw the hand gesture mirrored as a combat signal, and began counting down in his head. 3. The Zytherians tensed. 2. The security detail looked confused. 1. Plasma fire erupted. Now, as Logan flipped a table and used it as a makeshift shield, he cursed the UN, diplomacy, and whatever committee decided to replace armed guards with empathy mediators. He peeked over the edge just in time to see a Zytherian lieutenant climbing over a dais with a blaster. Logan launched a chair at him. The alien crumpled. Somewhere in the back, someone was crying and shouting about trade agreements. Logan yanked open a side panel and shoved 2 diplomats into an emergency chute. The third tried to argue about protocol until Logan punched the panel and sent them all down the tube. He was alone now, the room glowing red, the smell of ozone thick in the air. The Zytherians weren't stopping. They weren't shooting to intimidate. They were shooting to kill. And Logan had no weapons, no team, and no backup. All he had was his brain, his fists, and a rusting orbital station designed by people who believed in open concept layouts and peaceful intentions. Logan slid behind a pillar as a beam cut through the space he'd been standing in. A wall panel hissed nearby. One of the interpreters, a spindly intern named Wes, was trying to crawl toward him, clutching something to his chest. Logan dragged him into cover. The kid's nose was bleeding, and he looked one sneeze away from death, but he held out a small device, shaking. They filmed everything, he gasped. It's all here. They shot first. We didn't provoke them. You have to show them. You have to. A plasma bolt tore through the kid's chest before he could finish. Logan caught the device before it hit the floor. Blood smeared across the metallic casing. He didn't know exactly what was on it, but if it was what the kid claimed, it might be the only evidence that could save Earth from an interstellar war. He shoved it into his jacket pocket, grabbed the interpreter's headset, and listened in. Zytherian chatter buzzed through the line. Code phrases. Orders. They were treating this as a military operation. Worse, they were broadcasting Earth's response as hostile. Twisting everything. Their entire species would think humanity fired first. Which meant retaliation was next. Logan stared at the device. Earth needed this footage. Fast. He bolted out of cover, zigzagging across the smoking hall, ducking and leaping like a man half his age. A panel exploded near his foot. He vaulted over debris, dashed through a side corridor, and slammed into a locked blast door. Behind him, he heard boots, or whatever Zytherians had that passed for boots, clanking toward him. No weapon. No time. He cracked the access panel open with a fire extinguisher and began rewiring. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't clean. It was wartime engineering, and he was the only engineer left alive. The door hissed open just enough for him to squeeze through. He ran. Past flickering lights, through empty observation decks, past a dead janitor still holding a mop. He knew the station layout better than he wanted to admit. The emergency pod bay was just ahead. He sprinted, lungs burning, the device like lead in his pocket. The pod was there. Intact. Undamaged. Logan jumped in, slammed the door, and punched in the Earth coordinates. The screen blinked. Error. Autopilot override engaged. Destination, Zytherian Prime. He stared in disbelief. Someone had rerouted all pods, forcing them to return to Zytherian space. Whoever planned this didn't just want to win a battle. They wanted Earth to look guilty, to send survivors straight into enemy hands, confirming their lie. Logan considered his options. He had a one-way ticket to enemy territory, one blood-covered piece of evidence, and no plan. But he had survived worse. He'd faked his death in Havana, escaped pirates in Somalia, and once held his breath for 4 minutes inside a submarine filled with poisonous gas and angry crabs. He could do this. As the pod launched, Logan slumped into the seat, closed his eyes, and muttered, "I was supposed to be retired." Outside the window, stars streaked by, and Earth vanished behind him. Ahead, Zytheria loomed. And they had no idea who they were about to let land. Logan Wade awoke to the gentle hum of alien engines and the unmistakable smell of antiseptic jelly smeared under his nose. His head throbbed, not from injury, but from the sheer absurdity of his situation. He was in an alien spacecraft, headed straight for the heart of Zytherian territory, with a data recorder hidden in his sock and no backup, no exit strategy, and no working idea of what exactly he was going to do once the doors opened. The escape pod's life support systems were still running, albeit with a weird background audio loop that sounded like a motivational speech from a sentient washing machine. The screen on the side wall flashed a Zytherian character that translated loosely to "Welcome to detention processing." Logan wiped the goo from his face and sighed. The pod docked with a quiet hiss. As the doors slid open, Logan assumed the stance he'd perfected over a decade of undercover ops, hunched, confused, slightly constipated. 4 Zytherian guards were waiting, weapons drawn but not aimed. They looked bored. One of them tilted its head at Logan and clicked something in its throat. The universal translator, a barely functioning earpiece Logan had nicked from the station's debris, interpreted the message as "Greetings, Prisoner 12. You smell like boiled fungus." Logan didn't flinch. He gave them the dumbest human smile he could muster and stumbled forward like an injured diplomat with low blood sugar. The Zytherians didn't seem to suspect a thing. In fact, after a short and confusing screening process, during which Logan accidentally declared himself both a sanitation expert and a ceremonial dance instructor, he was labeled as non-threat tier and assigned to janitorial duty within the Zytherian capital's central administration dome. Somehow, they thought he was part of Earth's cleanup crew. And just like that, Logan Wade, ex-SEAL, Earth's last hope, became a glorified alien janitor. The administration dome was a marvel of engineering, all glistening crystal walls and floating walkways, populated by bureaucrats in shimmering robes arguing over trade regulations and war funding. Logan, dressed in a poorly fitted gray uniform with blorg stitched across the chest, pushed a mop across reflective floors while eavesdropping on every conversation he could. His cover was flawless. No one paid attention to the janitor, especially not one who walked funny and muttered to himself about mop fluid. He discovered early that Zytherian internal politics were more convoluted than a tax code written by drunk-time travelers. Every military decision had to pass through a dozen councils, all of which required subcommittees, approval stamps, and a ceremonial song. The current war against Earth was being driven forward not by fear or revenge, but by something called strategic growth algorithms, which apparently predicted that a good planetary conflict every few decades kept the Zytherian economy healthy. That was the first real crack Logan spotted. This wasn't about Earth being dangerous. It was about Earth being convenient. On his third day as Blorg, he was assigned to clean the War Chamber's refreshment corridor, a polished hall leading into the nerve center of the invasion fleet. As he mopped around a sculpture of what looked like a lizard choking a star, he heard a strange sound, snickering. Not Zytherian. Not entirely alien either. He turned to see a group of Zytherian commanders gathered around a holographic display, mocking Earth's diplomatic team using heavily edited footage. One of the videos showed Ricci waving with a banana photoshopped into his hand. Another had Logan's face plastered over a chicken dancing to Earth disco. He fought the urge to laugh. The propaganda campaign was deeper than he thought. Zytherians were being shown doctored footage to stir hatred, turn public opinion, and justify preemptive planetary extermination. Worse, someone high up was orchestrating it. The video edits were precise, intentional, and featured camera angles that shouldn't exist unless someone from Earth's side had handed over the raw footage. That's when Logan saw her. Dr. Mallory Chin. Linguist, cryptographer, and the only person he'd ever let read his poetry without threat of violence. She was dressed in Zytherian ceremonial robes, speaking their language fluently, gesturing with authority. He felt his stomach drop. She wasn't just collaborating. She was one of them. And if she was helping forge the videos, she had betrayed Earth on a level that made international treason look like jaywalking. Logan kept his mop moving. Mallory passed by him without recognition, deep in conversation with a Zytherian strategist. He memorized her route, her security clearance badge color, and the way her hand drifted toward her hip when she was stressed. Same old tell. His next move had to be careful. Reckless acts wouldn't save Earth. They'd only get him incinerated or, worse, reassigned to sewage filtration. That night, in the janitorial bunkroom that smelled vaguely of hot rubber and sadness, Logan hacked into the Zytherian administrative system using a console designed for maintenance requests. With a mixture of human intuition and dumb luck, he accessed an archived personnel report confirming Mallory's employment under the title of Earth Integration Specialist. Whatever that meant, it wasn't good. Worse, she had level 6 access, which meant she could walk into the planetary control room and request a fleet launch with no more effort than ordering a pizza. Logan leaned back on the metal bunk, staring at the ceiling. He needed allies, information, and a way to contact Earth without tipping off the Zytherians. But all he had was a stolen interpreter's earpiece, an access badge he lifted from an unconscious caterer, and a data recorder full of incriminating footage shoved into a broken soap dispenser. The next day brought both surprise and opportunity. The sanitation team received a personnel change. New recruit. Logan expected another wide-eyed janitor with bad aim and worse posture. Instead, he was introduced to Vox, a Zytherian security reject reassigned due to excessive enthusiasm for explosives. Vox was massive, had one eye twitching at all times, and spoke with the dramatic flair of a theater dropout. Logan liked him instantly. Their first interaction was an argument over mop placement that turned into a mutual understanding that both of them were pretending to be far dumber than they actually were. Vox wasn't loyal to the Zytherian regime. He'd been sidelined after a training accident involving a wedding cake and a plasma grenade. Logan saw an opening and carefully began probing. Within 2 days, Vox was helping him access restricted vents, record conversations, and acquire snacks without paying. Progress. Logan now had a plan. He would intercept a routine propaganda broadcast scheduled in 3 days, inject the real footage, and beam it across Zytherian public networks. The risk was astronomical. If caught, he'd be executed, and if the footage was dismissed as more Earth trickery, Earth's destruction would be fast-tracked. But if it worked, it would be the first domino in toppling the narrative. The timing had to be perfect. He had to maneuver around Mallory without tipping her off. He had to convince Vox that revolution was more fun than demolition. And he had to somehow do all this while still cleaning bathrooms that sprayed disinfectant gas every time you looked at them sideways. The corridor smelled like antiseptic and betrayal. Logan stood behind a pillar, watching Mallory Chen glide past with the poise of someone completely convinced she was on the right side of history. She moved like she belonged here, speaking fluent Zytherian to two high-ranking officers, pointing at a hollow map of Earth's orbit like it was just another vacation spot being considered for development. Logan's heart beat a slow, angry rhythm in his chest. He'd spent 3 nights plotting the best way to leak the evidence, sabotaging communication towers, building trust with Vox, even dodging patrols in the food court just to get within range of the public signal beacons. And now he was watching the one person who had taught him how to speak 3 dead dialects of Farsi casually pitch his home planet as target practice. It would have been easier if she just turned out to be evil. A cold-hearted villain working for power, credits, or fame. But that wasn't Mallory. He knew her too well. She didn't chase ambition for its own sake. She chased meaning. She once wrote an academic thesis arguing that miscommunication, not violence, had caused 90% of human conflict. Now she was helping stage one of the biggest misunderstandings in the galaxy. Something didn't add up. Vox nudged Logan's shoulder and whispered from behind his utility belt, which for some reason he wore sideways like a fashion statement. We could stun her. 1 zap, 10 seconds, she forgets her name. Logan shook his head. Too risky? Too many eyes. And besides, if he stunned her, he wouldn't get answers. He needed to know why she flipped. Why she, of all people, would betray Earth. And deep down, though he'd never admitted aloud, he needed to know if she had betrayed him too, or just the planet. Later that night, after disabling 2 security bots with a trail of explosive marshmallows Vox had cooked up, Logan made his way into a disused observation dome overlooking the capital. The place was empty, abandoned since the Zytherians discovered that its dome magnified planetary radiation and gave everyone mild nausea. It was the perfect place for a private meeting, and thanks to Vox's hacking skills, Mallory's daily route had been slightly rerouted. She arrived exactly 4 minutes after Logan activated the beacon hidden in the old telescope control panel. She stepped through the sliding doors, the Zytherian robe flowing around her like a royal cloak. For a long moment, she said nothing. Neither did he. The air was thick with unspoken histories and a strange scent that Logan realized was melted plastic. Probably a vent issue. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, calculated, but not cold. You always did find the quietest places to yell at people, she said. And you always chose the worst times to lecture about context, Logan replied. Then he reached into his pocket and tossed her the data recorder. She caught it without looking. So, you've seen it, she said. Her voice didn't change. No surprise. No fear. Just quiet acceptance. I lived it, Logan said. I watched them fire first. I buried half the team. And then I got on a pod that hijacked itself straight to your front door. Imagine my surprise when the welcoming committee included my ex-girlfriend in royal alien drag. Mallory finally looked at him. Her eyes were tired, older than the years that had passed. You don't understand what's really going on here. Then explain it. Because from where I'm mopping floors, it looks like you sold out humanity for a better office. She sighed and walked toward the window. Earth floated in the distance, tiny and blue, the kind of fragile beauty that made your stomach hurt if you looked too long. Mallory tapped the recorder against her palm. Earth was never going to survive the Zytherians. Even before the misfire, this war was scheduled. Their AI calculates every 50 years they need an external threat to maintain order. We were next in line. Nothing would have stopped that. Not peace talks. Not translations. Not even your glorious mop bucket. I saw it coming before anyone else, Logan. So I made a deal. He stepped closer, watching her carefully. What kind of deal? She hesitated. A slow breath. A calculation. The kind that took all emotion out of an answer. I agreed to help stage the attack. Make Earth look like the aggressor. Accelerate the conflict. Keep it small. Controlled. Localized. No planetary destruction. Just a decisive battle. Then peace. Trade. Integration. Survival. They get their war. We get to exist. Logan felt like someone had kicked his chest from the inside. You used the deaths of diplomats to choreograph a massacre. I minimized damage, she snapped, her voice cracking for the first time. You think I wanted this? I had to choose between a fake war or a real extermination. You think Earth could survive a 10-year galactic siege? We can barely survive internet outages without eating each other. He didn't know what to say. For the first time since he landed, Logan Wade was stunned into silence. She believed it. Every word. She believed this betrayal was the only way to save what she loved. And that made her more dangerous than any Zytherian general. You're going to use that data, she said, nodding to the recorder still in her hand. You'll expose everything. Blow this whole thing apart. I am, Logan said. Because the truth is not a weapon you get to aim. The truth either frees people, or it buries them. Then you've doomed Earth, she whispered. No, you did that the second you stopped trusting your own species. She didn't respond. Just turned and walked away, slipping the recorder back to him as she passed. Her fingers brushed his for half a second longer than necessary. A part of him wanted to reach out, to grab her, to shake her and ask why she didn't tell him, why she didn't try to bring him in, why she still smelled like cinnamon tea and moral compromise. Instead, he let her go. 2 days later, Logan and Vox stood in a server room disguised as a janitorial supply closet, hooking the recorder into the primary transmission node. It was their only chance to override the next propaganda broadcast and leak the real footage of the Zytherians firing first. Logan didn't sleep. Vox only napped between dramatic monologues about rebellion and snacks. As they waited for the upload to finish, Logan stared at the red blinking light and thought about Mallory. Not about the betrayal. Not even about the war. He thought about the time they got lost in a jungle near Machu Picchu, and she yelled at a monkey for stealing her pen. He thought about her terrible singing voice and the way she always double-knot her boots. He thought about the girl he fell for, and the woman she became. The upload completed. The broadcast was live. Across Zytherian space, millions of citizens watched unedited footage of Earth's diplomats being cut down mid-handshake. Gasps, confusion, riots. The AI didn't suppress it fast enough. The story cracked. The narrative fractured. Logan turned to Vox. Phase 1's done. Vox grinned, wide and dangerous. Phase 2? Find the liar who programmed this mess. And make her tell the galaxy who ordered it. And if she doesn't? Then we start the real war. The one with the truth. The explosion happened exactly 13 seconds into the peace summit. Logan had predicted 15, but Zytherian clocks were slightly faster than Earth's, and the explosives Vox rigged were apparently more sensitive than advertised. A ceremonial podium launched into the air like a cork from a shaken bottle, clipping the Zytherian Minister of Harmony in the chin and sending him spiraling into a flower arrangement made of carnivorous vines. Screams followed, then gasps, then silence as the entire assembly turned to the center of the chamber where a smoking projector screen now played the unedited footage of Earth's diplomatic team being obliterated mid-introduction. Logan stood near the back, half disguised in a server maintenance robe, watching the chaos unfold. His hand was already on the emergency comms device strapped beneath his belt, and his eyes scanned the room for Mallory. She hadn't shown up yet, which meant she was either watching from behind the scenes or planning something worse. The leak had worked. The truth was out. Now came the hard part. Surviving the consequences. At first, the Zytherian leaders shouted over one another, demanding explanations, accusing Earth of deepfake propaganda, demanding arrests. But then the footage looped. The slow-motion frame of the Zytherian commander raising his weapon, the terrified expression on the Earth delegate's face, the first blast of plasma. The crowd quieted. People began whispering. Some of them looked visibly shaken. A young translator fainted. The Minister of Expansion dropped her war ledger. Logan turned to Vox, who stood beside him with a proud grin and a detonator in his hand that Logan had specifically told him not to bring. Vox had ignored that request like he ignored all reasonable advice. But for now, he seemed content to enjoy the show. "That's the sound of trust unraveling," Vox said, his voice soft like a man admiring a sunset. "That's the noise right before a system collapses." "It's also the noise before someone tries to kill us," Logan muttered. Sure enough, seconds later, the security alert blared. Lights flashed red, steel panels slammed down over the exits, and a robotic voice began calmly explaining that all traitors would be liquefied in order of arrival. Mallory's voice cut through the chamber, smooth and deadly as ever. From a high balcony she descended, her robe flowing, flanked by 2 elite guards with stun lances and no visible sense of humor. "Do not believe the manipulation," she said. "This footage has been doctored. There are layers of deception here. Enemies of peace seek to twist your perception and create confusion. The war is not about who fired first. It is about ensuring our security against a species that cannot manage its own instincts." Logan stepped forward before anyone else could speak. Mallory saw him and stiffened. "You're right," he said loudly. "Earth's instincts are messy. But not messy enough to stage a massacre in a peace chamber just for the sake of a security quota." He raised the second device. It was a backup transmitter linked directly to a public feed. This one held more than just the shooting. It contained the meeting records, the intercepted communications between Mallory and the Zytherian Command Council, the orders she signed, and even a snippet of her planning the false flag with a Zytherian strategist who kept interrupting to ask what pizza was. The projection snapped to life, this time with audio. Mallory's voice played on loop, calm and cold as she outlined exactly how Earth's response would be staged, how survivors would be redirected, and how the war would be contained to a politically useful time frame. Gasps turned to shouts. Shouts turned to accusations. Mallory's guards hesitated. One took a step away from her. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes flickered. "You think this will stop the war," she said, turning toward Logan. "You've exposed the system that was designed to protect both sides. Now chaos will follow. The AI won't allow this. The Zytherian Central Network will initiate an override. You've invited collapse." Logan shrugged. "Good. Let it collapse. Better honest chaos than sanitized tyranny." The room descended into confusion as council members began yelling for an emergency session, others screaming to seize Mallory, and at least one shouting about reforming the breakfast rations. Amid the chaos, Mallory activated a small device on her wrist and vanished in a shimmer of transport energy. Logan cursed. Vox just looked impressed. "Did you see that exit? I want one of those." They didn't have time to chase her. The backup device began blinking furiously. The signal was being traced. Not just traced. Counterhacked. Within seconds, the AI defense system would locate the signal's origin and lock them down. "We need to move," Logan said, grabbing Vox's arm. They raced through the now chaotic chamber, ducking stunned guards and angry diplomats, sliding through a side corridor as emergency doors slammed shut behind them. Vox guided them through maintenance shafts using a map only he could understand and which might have been drawn in crayon. Logan didn't ask. They ended up in an underlevel rarely used by anyone except repair drones and old security bots. It was there they found a maintenance cell, a prison of sorts, forgotten by most. And inside they found him. A boy, maybe 17, maybe older. He had dark hair, human eyes, and Zytherian facial markings. He looked up from a corner, eyes narrowing. "Took you long enough," he said. Logan froze. Vox blinked. "Do we know you?" Logan asked slowly. The kid stood up, arms crossed, expression sharp and bitter. "You should. I'm your son." The silence was heavier than any explosion. Logan stared, not entirely sure if the stress was finally making him hallucinate. The boy walked closer, lifting his chin defiantly. Name's Jet. Mom said you'd probably never come for me. Said you'd think it was all a lie? But I've got the proof, and the timing sucks, so congratulations, you're now the father of a half-human, half-Zytherian rebel with access to internal systems. Logan opened his mouth, closed it, then turned to Vox. You hearing this too? Yep. Might need a nap. Jet rolled his eyes. I'd been hacking the AI systems from down here for months. I knew someone would eventually try to expose the truth. Didn't think it'd be you, Dad. But hey, weirder things have happened. Like being born on a science vessel while your mom sabotages a war. Logan slowly sat down on a nearby crate. His whole body ached from running, fighting, processing betrayal, and now this. He looked at the kid again, seeing the familiar shape of his jaw, the way his right eye twitched when he was annoyed. Yeah. It was possible. And more than that, if it was true, it meant he had more skin in this game than ever. All right, Logan said. Let's say I believe you. What's your play? Jet smirked. We take down the AI. From the inside. I've been building a virus. It can't stop the system alone, but with the data you just leaked and the chaos Mallory created, we've got an opening. A small one. Logan leaned forward. You've been doing this from a prison cell? Jet shrugged. You can do a lot with recycled wire and a grudge. Vox clapped his hands. This is officially the best revolution I've ever been part of. Family drama, espionage, hacking teenagers. I'm crying. Logan stood. Then let's blow the door off this system. Together. Father, son, and one overenthusiastic alien demolitionist. It was time to end this war properly. Logan didn't know what surprised him more, that he had a son in an alien prison or that said son had apparently spent the last 2 years quietly building an AI virus with scrap parts and attitude. Jet sat cross-legged on the floor, hunched over a pile of circuits that looked suspiciously like they were stolen from a coffee dispenser and a medical drone. His hands moved fast, fingers dancing with the ease of someone who had long since made peace with living off stolen hardware and spare adrenaline. Logan watched him work in silence, unsure whether to feel pride, guilt, or just a growing panic that the fate of 2 species now hinged on a teenager with trust issues and a grudge the size of the moon. Jet didn't look up as he spoke. The AI core is located in the Vault District, right beneath the central tower. It's guarded by a rotating shield frequency, biometric locks key to Zytherian neural signatures, and a fleet of drones that vaporize anything not cleared in the system. Also, there's a biometric override key held by one of the High Council members. I know where it is, but stealing it will be, and I say this with love, absolutely suicidal. Logan exchanged a glance with Vox, who looked more excited than alarmed. Suicidal plans were his favorite kind. Logan leaned against the wall and crossed his arms. So let me get this straight. We break into the most secure part of the Zytherian capital, avoid drone vaporization, steal a council member's brain signature, sneak past an army of AI-controlled defenses, and then you install a virus built from broken vending machines. Did I miss anything? Jet shrugged. Yeah. We have to do it before the AI reboots the narrative processor. Once that happens, they'll erase all traces of the leaked footage and spin the current chaos into a controlled martial law rollout. If we're not in the system before that, Earth gets marked for full annihilation. Logan let out a long, tired breath. Of course it does. Why wouldn't it? They didn't wait. There was no time. The streets of the capital were already shifting. Patrols doubled. Screens played conflicting propaganda. Some channels called for justice, others screamed of betrayal. Rumors of a civil split in the council were spreading fast. Zytherians who had seen the leaked footage were beginning to question the truth. It was the perfect window, a crack in the machine. Logan knew it wouldn't stay open for long. Their plan unfolded in 2 parts. Vox would create a distraction by faking a rebellion in the nutrient processing plant. It sounded ridiculous, but apparently, food riots and Zytherian culture triggered maximum response protocols. While the drones and security forces swarmed the fake uprising, Logan and Jet would infiltrate the Vault District through an abandoned maintenance tunnel Jet had discovered during his time in the cell. Vox vanished with a wide grin and a homemade banner that read "Free the Flavor." 10 minutes later, alarms began screaming across the city. Logan and Jet moved quickly through the lower levels, slipping past distracted patrols and confused citizens. The tunnel was narrow and lined with pipes that hissed with steam and chemicals that probably weren't designed for human lungs. Jet coughed but didn't slow down. Logan followed close, occasionally checking behind them. "You always plan like this?" he asked between breaths. "Only when the stakes involve genocide," Jet replied. They reached the edge of the Vault District, a shimmering blue wall that pulsed with energy. Jet pulled out a device made of shattered lenses and a rewired toothbrush, pressed it to the wall, and waited. The shield shimmered, flickered, and then parted just wide enough for them to slip through. Logan didn't ask how. He was starting to accept that his son's brilliance came packaged with very few explanations. Inside, the air changed. It was cooler, almost sterile. The architecture was different, smoother, more precise. It felt less like a city and more like the inside of a machine. They moved in silence, ducking through sensor arcs and hugging shadows. Jet pointed to a side corridor. The council member's biometric key is stored in a neurocrystal embedded in his headgear. He's usually meditating in the Serenity Chamber, which, by the way, is guarded by 2 drones and a temperamental AI door that hates loud noises. "Let me guess," Logan muttered. "You brought a speaker?" Jet grinned and pulled out a small cube. "Volume maxed. Zytherian lullabies remixed with Earth metalcore." They reached the chamber. The drones stood statue still until the first blast of screaming guitar and alien nursery rhymes hit the air. The drones twitched, reeled, then crashed into each other in a malfunctioning spiral. Logan rushed in, darted past the now sputtering AI door, and approached the meditating counselor. He didn't hurt him. He just plucked the headgear off gently, careful not to wake him. A soft snore indicated the man had apparently taken a sleep supplement. Logan didn't question it. With the key in hand, they moved toward the central vault. A towering spire of light pulsed from the floor to the ceiling, surrounded by layers of data holograms and floating security pods. Jet moved with laser focus, inserting the key, bypassing the interface, and beginning the upload of his virus. "We're in," he whispered. 2 minutes. Logan stood guard, heart pounding. He knew it couldn't be this easy. Something always went wrong. Right on cue, the temperature dropped. From the shadows, Mallory emerged. No guards. No weapons. Just calm fury in her eyes and something else, pain. "You had to make it personal," she said. "You had to drag our son into this." Logan blinked. "Wait, you knew?" "Of course I knew," Mallory snapped. "I sent him away because I wanted him to survive. He was never supposed to be part of this." Jet didn't look up from his work. "You don't get to play noble, Mom. You lied to everyone, including me." Mallory stepped forward. "You don't understand what the AI is protecting us from. This war machine exists because peace is too fragile. It preserves balance. Without it, the Zytherians will splinter. The galaxy will burn." "Then let it burn," Jet whispered. Logan raised his hand. He didn't want this to end in a fight. But he saw the resolve in Mallory's posture. She was ready to stop them, even if it meant breaking everything that remained between them. "I know you think you're saving lives," Logan said. "But sometimes saving lives means letting people choose their fate. Not forcing it." Mallory's voice trembled. "And what if they choose war? Then we'll fight it honestly, not under a lie." The vault pulsed. Upload complete. Jet pressed a final key. The AI core began to shimmer, its data streams twisting, fracturing. A low hum filled the chamber, then a sharp silence. All across the city, systems crashed. Screens went black. Drones froze. The war algorithms halted. And for the first time in decades, the Zytherian Empire stood without a script. Mallory dropped to her knees. She didn't cry. She just stared at the ground as if something inside her had been unplugged. Jet stepped back. It's done. Logan placed a hand on his shoulder. No, he said. Now it really begins. The silence that followed the AI's collapse felt like the breath the galaxy had been holding for far too long. Logan stood beside Jet in the heart of the now dormant vault, surrounded by flickering lights and deactivated drones, watching data streams disintegrate like smoke in the air. The walls, once humming with endless calculation, were now still. He could hear his own heartbeat, the faint static of broken systems, and the slow, uneven breathing of Mallory, still kneeling on the floor, staring at nothing. The weight of her decision seemed to finally settle across her shoulders like an invisible chain. Outside, the city was chaos. But it was a different kind of chaos than before. Not the cold, orderly panic of military enforcement, but real confusion. Honest disorder. Streets filled with citizens trying to understand what had happened, security bots frozen mid-command, council chambers erupting in argument as decades of automated control vanished. A system built on artificial stability had cracked wide open, and no one knew what came next. Vox found them not long after the shutdown, dragging a broken drone behind him and laughing like a man who had finally gotten the punchline to a joke he heard years ago. I told them, he said, slapping the wall with a grin. I told them order was a myth. Now look at us. A janitor, a rebel teenager, and a demolition hobbyist just wiped out the galaxy's most efficient tyranny. Logan helped Mallory to her feet. She didn't resist. Her face was blank, the kind of expression you wear when you've run out of both excuses and energy. You'll need to answer for what you did, he said quietly. She nodded without looking at him. I know, she whispered. I just wanted to protect everyone. I never thought it would go this far. Jet didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence between him and Mallory said more than any argument could. There would be time for reckoning later. For now, they needed to leave before the confusion turned into violence. Logan didn't trust the council to react with grace, not when they were realizing they had to think for themselves again. The escape was less dramatic than expected. With systems down, surveillance was patchy at best. Vox led them through a maze of underground transport tunnels, bypassing lock stations and patrol paths using sheer memory and the occasional improvised shortcut involving ductwork and fire foam. They reached the outer perimeter within hours. Logan had expected pursuit, but there was none. The Empire was too stunned to organize. They found a launch bay on the edge of the capital, half-manned and poorly guarded. Inside sat a medium-range diplomatic shuttle, sleek and half-fueled, likely meant for fleeing council members. Jet hacked the bay doors while Vox rewired the fuel systems and Logan secured the entry points. Mallory moved like a ghost, neither helping nor resisting. Logan didn't trust her, but he didn't have the heart to abandon her either. Not yet. The shuttle lifted off just as the first city-wide emergency protocols began rebooting. Logan watched the capital shrink below them, bathed in confusion and scattered light. For a moment, he let himself breathe. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had cracked open the lie, shut down the machine, and exposed the truth. Earth wouldn't be destroyed. Not today. Not under a manufactured war. But peace was still a question mark, and questions were dangerous. Back on Earth, the reception was complicated. Logan and Jet returned with the footage, the AI code logs, and Mallory in custody. The UN tribunal, hastily assembled and filled with people who had once written Logan off as a washed-up soldier, listened in stunned silence as the truth was laid out. For once, no one interrupted him. When the final piece of the evidence played, showing the Zytherian AI simulation proposing Earth as a calculated war target for economic benefit, the room fell quiet. Then the diplomats, the ambassadors, the analysts, they began to understand what had nearly happened. Mallory was taken into custody. She didn't argue. She gave a full statement, admitted everything, and refused to ask for leniency. Her last words to Logan were simple. I hope one day Jet understands. And maybe you too. Logan watched her leave, then walked out of the tribunal without saying anything else. He wasn't ready to forgive, But he wasn't angry anymore. Just tired. So tired. Jet adjusted faster than Logan expected. Earth offered him asylum, protection, and a dozen scholarship offers once they realized he had single-handedly dismantled the galactic war engine. But he turned them all down. "I'm not going to school," he said. "I just got done breaking the galaxy's biggest lie. I think I'll start with something simpler. Like a food truck." Logan laughed harder than he had in years. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Jet replied. "You know how many planets have never tasted real tacos? I could be a pioneer. Call it sealed with flavor." So that was what they did. 2 weeks later, Logan and Jet were flipping tortillas inside a custom-rigged shuttle parked on one of Earth's orbital stations, selling fusion snacks to diplomats, tourists, and anyone who wanted a break from politics. Box came by every few days, usually to trade explosives for spicy sauces. He said retirement bored him. Logan didn't argue. Peace didn't happen overnight. The Zytherians were still reeling. Some factions wanted revenge, others wanted reform. But the war was off. The AI was dead. The truth was out. And for the first time in a long time, Logan believed the galaxy had a shot at something better. One evening, as the sun rose over the station's viewing deck, Logan sat with a cup of bad coffee and watched Jet serve 3 hungry Martian students. The boy was smiling. Genuinely smiling. It didn't erase everything they'd lost, but it was something. Something real. A beep came from the counter. An incoming transmission. Logan tapped the console. A hologram flickered to life. A Zytherian diplomat, young, nervous, adjusting her robes. "Apologies for the interruption," she said. "There's a situation on Mars. Something about a containment breach and possibly zombies. Is the seal available?" Logan stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he took a sip of his coffee, stood up, stretched his back, and muttered just loud enough for Jet to hear. "Put it on the tab." Jet didn't even look up. "I'll keep the grill warm." Logan grinned and walked toward the ship bay. Because sometimes peace was quiet, and sometimes it needed a little help surviving. And if that help came with a side of tacos, even better.